I don't know. Do we really want to say what we said? Like the fucking... Set the topic how we want to say.
It was political policies that wiped me out, okay? I did everything right, okay? So this was the beginning of we're going to filter all the money to the richest people on earth. They knew it was going to fuck America. They knew it was going to fuck the American worker. But they didn't care because they're going to run off with the bank. This was a very bad time in America, and it's affecting us greatly today.
Or do you think it's something that we could bring back?
You can wreck a house in a day, but it takes like a year to build it, okay?
Yeah, right.
Ready?
Yeah.
Red?
Yeah.
We're good?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh. Okay. Ready?
Okay. Take 3.
I keep hitting the wrong
What are you doing over there?
Ready? Okay, here we go.
Let's do it.
Okay, ready?
Oh, now we're doing it. Oh. Have you been practicing?
Yeah. We can talk over it.
Okay.
1 second.
I was just so mesmerized by your...
Discretion is advised.
Okay, now we can talk.
That was fantastic.
Oh, thank you. A nice intro.
How's it going?
Good. How you doing? Long time no see. I haven't seen you since the
December, right?
Rock Godz event.
Oh, yeah. Also, Rock Godz event, which was, what, a month ago?
Something like that.
It's been a month already.
Right.
First, though, I do have to comment on the new range that you put in your kitchen. It looks fantastic.
You mean the range hood?
The range hood.
Oh, thank you.
The range hood, yeah.
I built it. You know I built it.
Yeah, it looks fantastic. I know it's been your project for quite a while now.
I know. I finally got it done.
Good job.
You know, I got to squeeze it in between building guitars.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, the cool thing is my guitar painting skills came in because we've made it look faux metal like a guitar.
It does look, it looks like metal, yeah.
Well, thanks. Cool. So, Rock Godz event.
So, yeah, that was the last time I saw you. You were inducted into the Rock Godz Hall of Fame.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
First ever and only, I believe, guitar manufacturer, correct?
I might have been.
First and only.
Yeah. Well, anyways, yeah, I got this nice award.
Yeah, it was a really great event, and we got to see Ides of March. They played, right?
Yeah, do you want to hold up my award?
I get to hold it? I don't know. Remember the last time I held your guitar, I like slammed it on the ceiling. It's beautiful, very shiny.
Right.
Looks fantastic.
Oh, thanks.
Congratulations.
Well, thank you.
Again.
Yeah, I didn't know what to expect, but it actually turned out to be a pretty cool event. What was your view of the party?
I thought it was great. I mean, I really loved that they had all these rock legends performing. I enjoyed everyone's speeches. I know we have some clips of your speech as well. It's cool to hear everybody speak about their experience in the industry.
Yeah,
and
who else was there?
I know we had Jim Peterick there with Ides of March.
Right. Who claims he's going to come on a podcast.
He says he's going to come.
Right. So for those people who don't know, Jim Peterick had a band Ides of March with a huge hit called Vehicle. And then he went on to the band Survivor and wrote the Rocky theme that kind of like put him way over the top.
Yeah.
So that was cool.
I'm really excited to have him on a podcast, by the way.
Cool.
And hear that whole story.
Right.
And then who was that band that you grew up listening to that was there?
Oh, you have to ask questions.
Buckingham.
Yeah.
The Buckinghams were also there.
The Buckingham.
You grew up a long time ago, so it makes sense that you
Yeah, but the event was a few weeks. Anyways, the Buckinghams played, and they had that big hit, Kind of a Drag, which I said wasn't kind of a drag in my speech. So that was kind of cool. Mm-hmm. Did you like the video that played? They played for me?
The video for you, it was fantastic. Is there any way we can kind of add that into this or play a little clip of that or maybe put a link at the bottom? I think that'd be something cool to share.
I think we'll have Drew add it at the end.
Yeah, that'd be great.
But it's like a 3-minute clip of my life.
I really love that. It was so well done and really showcase all the stuff that you've done and the musicians that have played your instruments.
Right. Why don't you say it? I stole the show.
You kind of stole the show, low-key. You did, actually.
Okay. My 2-minute speech ran 13 minutes.
It did.
Yeah.
My favorite part, though, was when you started the speech and you just said that your cup was dry and you threw it on the ground. It was very rock and roll.
Well, thanks.
We were all there watching, Susie, your whole family.
I was hoping to have a thing of water when I go on stage for my 13-minute speech. No,
you needed podcast
And
juice.
by the time I got up there, it was water. But by the time I got up there, I was out of
nothing
water.
left. Yeah.
And I realized I'm going on in a minute and I can't leave. And I'm going to get thirsty, but I was kind of pissed that
It
I had
still
no
turned
water.
out all right.
Okay, it's all good.
Your friend had nominated you, correct?
Freddie Salem of the band, you had to be nominated to get in.
Right.
But I actually had to be nominated by somebody who's already in.
Okay.
And a guy named Freddie Salem from the band Outlaws nominated me. And he died like a month later. Before, my nomination was like months ago, but he died. So that was kind of sad.
Yeah.
Yeah, I never got a chance to thank him. I was like, literally, I'll just see him there. And then he passed away. So they're a cool organization because they honor people that, might not get into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, considering big rock stars. A lot of big rock stars don't make it in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
A lot of people don't. We talked about this before. I don't know who gatekeeps the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, but there's so many people that should be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame that are not. Right.
We're not going to cover this again, but yeah, it's otherwise we'd be here for another hour. Hey, Jennifer, what's that on your hand?
It's a fake tattoo.
You had me worried for a minute.
No. So I've been wanting to get a real tattoo.
Let's see that. Hold on, let me see.
It's like Medusa.
Oh, okay.
It's a little hand tattoo. I really want to get a real tattoo, but I'm very indecisive. So everyone's been making fun of me because I keep trying out these temporary tattoos.
You're not going to get a tattoo on your hand.
Not as my first one. This looks a little like I just dip my hand and it looks like I got a stamp to go into a concert or something. I don't know, but it's kind of cool. But it's supposed to last 14 days, so stay tuned. Hopefully it comes off. I fucking ordered it online. I don't know. I might be here the next time
You don't know the Dean Zelinsky rules about tattoos?
No, what are they?
Don't fuck with your hands, don't fuck with your face, and don't fuck with your tits. And no tramp stamp.
All right.
That's
Everywhere else is game, though.
Yeah, that's cool.
No tits, no tramp stamp, no face, no... What was the other one?
No, don't hands. No.
Oh, it's too late for that.
You know what Bill Burr said? Well, he was talking about plastic surgery. He says, but there's no shirt for your face.
Oh, my God.
And there's no. Well, I guess you could put on a glove if they fuck it up.
On your whole face?
No, on your hand. Okay, we got to get into the story now. Okay.
Okay, that's enough of that.
Okay, I'm happy to see it's a fake tattoo.
It's fake, and hopefully it comes off.
Okay, let's move on. First, we want to talk about our topic today because everybody needs to know. Do you want to talk about it, or should I?
Well, so we're going to talk about how, I don't know, do we really want to say what we said, like the fucking, is that the topic, how we want to say it?
Okay.
I know that's what we said on.
Okay, I guess it's no secret.
Oh my God, how does one say this?
So it's no secret that my career had some bumps in the road and it was kind of I don't know what the term for it, but anyways, I had a tumultuous career, okay? I think it's no secret that my world got rocked relatively early. And it was basically, I was doing great. I was living the dream, and then this guy got in office named Ronald Reagan and just turned my world upside down.
Right. So tell us about that whole experience. I know when you initially went into the guitar industry, you took a lot of pride and passion in the actual manufacturing of the guitars itself. And that's something that you were doing by hand, and you had a talent and knack for it. So when he came into office and he implemented all of these new guidelines, it really affected you in your business. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
So I started in 1977. And let's face it, I went into the guitar business not because I was a Harvard MBA and I said, we're going to analyze some businesses and figure out, what would be a great business.
Yeah. I
went in kind of the American dream. I had a talent, I had an idea, and I launched my brand, And that was the beauty of America back then, is you really could, live out the dream.
Yeah.
So I launched my brand. It's 1977, a lot of success. Now it's like 1980, and we're still doing good. I got that year the Doobie Brothers won 5 Grammys. My guitar's on the show.
Yeah.
Rock stars are playing my guitars. I'm in most of the biggest stores in the country. Still, trying to get traction, but everything's firing on 4 cylinders. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry. Everything's firing on 8 cylinders. We're really doing good.
4 cylinders.
And then 1980, Ronald Reagan gets in office, okay? And the program was with Reagan. First thing he did, well, basically, he had the Reaganomics or the Reagan plan was fuck the American worker. We're going to go offshore, and the American consumer is going to get a great deal or a better deal. Mm-hmm. And that resonated with a ton of people because all they heard was the part where, hey, we're going to get a great deal, which they were. And that's what globalism is, okay? Mm-hmm. Basically, you can go offshore, get goods cheap, and be excited. Get a lot of good stuff. But globalism ultimately gets you 2 things. It gets you a lot of goods cheap, and eventually it gets you unemployed. And when you're unemployed, by the way, doesn't matter how cheap stuff is.
And at the time, when you first started out, everything with your company was American made, American manufactured, all here. And so this is something that really severely affected you and your company.
Right. Like I said, in 1980, we're still rocking, but Reagan's getting in. He's putting these policies in place. And like I said, the fuck the American worker, we're going offshore to get a better deal. Mm-hmm. And the first thing he does is fire the air traffic controllers. Mm-hmm. Okay. And they were union. And his whole thing was, break the unions. Okay. So all the air traffic controllers got fired, and they replaced them with what they called scabs at the time. And that was like my first entree into what's going to happen, okay? Yeah. Just so you know, what do you think the number 1 market was for me when I launched my company? What city in the United States do you think was my number 1 market?
So you had asked me this before, and I remember for some reason I was thinking like either New York or Texas or like Chicago, LA, like some bigger places. Mm-hmm. And then you had told me that it was Detroit. Exactly. And that was something that I would have never thought of.
Exactly. We were doing good in those big markets, especially Texas and New York, big dealers there. But my number 1 market was Detroit.
And the reason for that was that there were manufacturers there, correct?
All the cars in America were made in Detroit back then. Mm-hmm. They were all union workers, and these guys were making like $25 an hour.
And they like buying guitars.
And a lot of rockers there, but but the bottom line is they can afford a $1,000 guitar. Right. So then obviously we all know the story of Detroit. It just went to hell in a handbag. And even today, it's not as easy to, I think I sell more guitars in Alabama than Detroit, these days. Yeah. So anyhow, that was my first thing. And so all of a sudden, imports in America started coming in hot and heavy, okay? Right. And that was led by 2 things.
What was that?
Hondas and VCRs.
Okay.
And, I have a whole story about VCRs.
Yeah, let's hear the VCR story. Okay. You had told me a little bit about this, but...
Okay. When goods coming into America, now it's everything, okay? But in the old days, the 2 biggest things were VCRs and Hondas. Mm-hmm. Hondas because you got a lot of car for the money. They weren't the cheapest things, but when you bought a Honda, you got a lot of car for not a lot of money. And then VCRs. And why were VCRs so big?
They were hard to get, right? You couldn't really get them.
Okay. Many things, internet-wise and blah, 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 was driven by porn. Okay, there's stories about, okay. And this is, by the way, my view of the party, okay? By the way, everything I'm talking about today, there was a lot of stuff, they rewrote history about Ronald Reagan, and he was this. This is what I experienced, okay? Right. This is what other guitar manufacturers experienced. It wasn't me alone. Everybody got rocked, and we'll talk about that as we go. And tons of American manufacturers like me got rocked. And I was just this young kid with a dream. and I wanted to live out my dream, and all of a sudden, the door got slammed in my face.
Yeah.
Okay, but there's always something driving it. Okay, and what was driving it was before. Okay, I was a young guy. Okay, and I was making money, and my friends weren't making money, so I could go to a video store and buy I bought a nice TV, and I bought a VCR, and in those days VCRs were American made.
Yeah.
And they were like $800. Okay.
Oh my gosh, that's so wild.
And nobody could afford a VCR, but I could. So I was the only one amongst my friends that had a nice TV and a VCR. And in those days, VCRs, TV stores, there were TV stores. They weren't all big box stores. And they all had a room. They all sold videos,
right.
you know. And then they had rented videos. And there was always a back room with all the porn. Okay.
Man, I remember that. There'd be like a velvet curtain or something really. And then it'd say like adults only in the back.
Right. So
I remember that.
anyways, I had the porn machine. And all my friends came over to my house
The nice TV
to watch porn.
And the porn machine.
And prior to these porn machines, the only way to see porn movies was to go to these seedy theaters and sit with a bunch of other people, which was kind of weird.
Oh, God.
And the other way was 8mm, so you had to get out the old camera. You had to buy 8mm reels from the back of magazines or something. So there was like no way to watch porn. So all of a sudden, there's these VCRs coming from, I think, Japan at the time, $200 dollars and change, and they were basically porn machines. So everybody's buying them, everybody's renting porn and stuff like that. And that was the first, getting used to, this is the new world, and, we're buying stuff from Japan, and then soon thereafter, Korea.
Right. Suddenly this object, the VCR, was not affordable for anybody, and now everybody had access to it, and it was something that everyone could have in their homes, right?
Yeah, and these are what you call, paradigm shifts, okay? And this is a hard story to tell because there's a lot of moving parts. There's me like, what was happening to me, and there's the scenes and the kind of the political movement all happening at once. So we were okay, and then, 2 years in, we start, like probably 1982. Oh, that's a long time ago.
I wasn't even born yet.
We start really feeling it in the guitar business, okay?
Yeah.
And imports are getting hot and heavy. It's really started with Ibanez. And the Ibanez story was they were knocking off Gibson guitars, okay? And Gibson wasn't really good at building guitars in those days. So it was like, okay, like the word on the street was the Ibanez copies were better than the Gibsons, which didn't help the matter, by the way, because Gibson, if they were on their game, it wouldn't be. But anyways, Ibanez started making really good guitars. And then there were a bunch of other import companies that just had decent guitars cheap. Their quality was coming up. They were first out of Japan, and then there was the Korean movement. So eventually towards 82, 83, we're going to NAMM shows. There were 2 a year, and we're starting to feel it. Okay, it's tougher to sell guitars. Now, what was also going on, there was the Reagan recession. Okay, so I have accountants and business people around me, and my company's starting to get rocked. And these guys are telling me, oh, this is how you deal with a recession, okay? Professionals. And nobody had seen this before, okay? Nobody could tell me that this was a paradigm shift, okay?
Right.
And business in America was going to be
Change forever, really.
Change forever, yeah.
Yeah.
And this was a political movement, or a political philosophy that was put in place that we're just going to go offshore. And so what I'm saying, I'm kind of getting my ass kicked because I'm not embracing what's going on. I'm going to the NAMM show and people come by my booth, dealers and stuff. They say, and the whole dogma was, don't import, it'll kill your brand. Don't import, it'll kill your brand. Heard that a million times, okay?
Yeah.
And then those same guys would go to the Ibanez booth at the show and load up on guitars.
Right, so that was the problem. It's like you're wanting to stay true to manufacturing all of your goods here in America, and you have your whole system set up. But meanwhile, all of your competitors are taking their their product and having it manufactured overseas and just selling it at much lower rates. And you're kind of in a place where you're forced to sort of adapt to the entire market around you.
Right. But I fought it. We all fought it.
Right.
Okay. Because we didn't know what was happening to us. Okay. And the fact that there was a recession, if there was a recession,
it might have been a little more fun.
Right. The fact that there was a recession going on, you thought that this recession, like all recession, was going to end and you'd regain normalcy, like I envisioned and like I dreamed. Okay.
Right. But like this is just a phase. It's going to come around and go around.
That never happened. Okay.
Yeah.
And that was a big thing. So I'm spending cash. Eventually we start bleeding cash.
Yeah.
Because of, not reacting. And there's a thing called paradigm shifts. Okay. Paradigm shifts happen in recessions. Okay.
Yeah.
I know this after, being in business for almost 50 years. Here's a typical paradigm shift. There was one recession later on. I've been through several recessions in my lifetime, but it used to be like a company like Sears and the early days of Best Buy. They had big warehouses, and they would fill up their warehouses with merchandise. So if you were supplying them, whether it was guitars or refrigerators or whatever, they'd load up their warehouses. We hit a recession, and the brains in those companies say, "Why are we inventorying all this stuff?" So what they did is they said, okay, they went to all their suppliers, manufacturers, and said, okay, guys, we're not warehousing anymore. You guys have to warehouse the stuff. And they shift the whole burden of the warehousing and the expense of warehousing and inventorying up and, being out of whack with their inventory onto their suppliers. And they told the suppliers, this is what we're doing, and you got two choices. You can either do business with us this way, or we'll find somebody else.
Right.
Of course, everybody shifted. Okay. So now they shifted the burden of all the warehousing and all that stuff onto their suppliers, and they're doing well. Recession ends. You think they sit there and say, "Oh, hey guys, recession's over. We're going to load up our let's buy more warehouses and fill them up with merchandise."
Right. It's just a total change that doesn't ever revert back.
Right. But when everything's going well, they don't think about that stuff. They're just making money, and they're in the business of making money. Okay. When a recession hits, they have to change the way they do business, and that's when paradigm shifts happen. Okay.
Right.
And once again, we were in a paradigm shift and recession, paradigm shift, and everything went offshore and it wasn't coming back. Nobody said, okay, the deal's over. So that was one of the moving parts of this deal, okay?
Right. So at that point now, you're experiencing this hit. What did you do to move forward with your company? So you obviously ended up having to go offshore.
Right. Well, we were dabbling offshore. Okay. So pretty much around 1983, it's obvious, I got to do something. Okay. And I went to Japan, made a trip to Japan, and there's a company called ESP today. I met with one of the Shibuyas, and I don't to this day remember which one it was. And the ESP wasn't. Nobody knew about ESP. They weren't in the guitar business. They were, or they weren't big in the guitar. I don't even remember how I got hooked up with ESP. Yeah. But I flew over there, and one of the Shibuyas took me around Japan, and basically to set up, manufacturing in Japan. And this guy was so cool. It was like kind of the Japanese tradition back in the day where they just they knew to take care of business people from America. So I was not only going over there to meet with them, I had other factories to visit, okay?
Yeah.
I don't know my way around Japan. This one, factory was in Matsumoto or whatever it was. And this guy took me on the train to go visit another factory and just sat, outside or wherever he was until I was done with my business. And then he escorted me, back to Tokyo.
Kind of nice. You have your own little tour guide. Right.
So now that was my entree. I'm going to Japan, and so I started with the Bel Aire series. Okay,
Now, what's the Bel Aire series?
Okay, so the Bel Aire was going to achieve a few things. Number one, it was going to get us into importing and reduce our manufacturing cost. Number two, the Bel Aire was designed to be like a Fender-style guitar. I literally, when I designed the guitar, put a Fender Strat pickguard on a piece of paper, and I drew the guitar around it.
Really?
So it was going to, help get in the import. It was also going to be a less expensive guitar, and it was going to get me into the Fender market. It was going to do a lot of cool things.
I still think it's crazy that you literally got on a plane and went and sought out these factories and saw them in person, because I feel like so much has changed nowadays where you can do so much stuff online and remotely, and it's really wild just thinking about all of that.
We have to remember to talk about the communication age, because that was the great enabler, okay? So we will talk about that, but let's because it's a big part of this, okay? Because before, in those days, if we went to communicate overseas, we were doing it on telex machines, which we'll talk about.
Okay, incredible. And what happened with that series? So you started it there, and that was kind of your first taste in manufacturing, right?
Well, and
overseas.
Importing, yeah. So what happened is the whole guitar wasn't going to be built over there. They were building the neck over there. They were supplying me with all the hardware and electronics, okay? Pickguard, pickups, bridge, tuners, the whole 9 yards. We were building the bodies in Chicago and doing all the assembly work. And it was working out. I go to the NAMM show with the Bel Aire series. It was a big push that year. We had the Babies, we had the Bel Aires, and I built this ramp. I mean, I don't know if you can find pictures of it, but it was all the guitars horizontal, 22 different 22 Bel Aires. No two were in the same finish. I mean, we had pink burst, light pink, dark pink, pink burst, light blue, dark blue, blue burst, just the whole line. Had my most successful show.
Really?
The Bel Aire sold like crazy. I remember the Venom in Music, which was a big dealer in Maryland. Coob Venom came by, saw that ramp. He says, I want one of everyone. It was just like,
you definitely need to find a picture of that. That sounds really cool.
They exist. I don't know if I can find them. So anyhow.
What was the cost of a Bel Aire in 84?
Okay. I think the Bel Aire was like $700-800, okay? Had a lot of bells and whistles. We're also going, the metal market was getting, bigger. We were doing HS, hum singles in the Bel Aire. We had a little going on. We had 2-post trims and some cool features. Anyways, we start rolling, manufacturing, getting the parts in, building the bodies and painting them up, start getting them to the store. About the same day the guitars started hitting the stores, Fender came out. Now, Fender was dabbling, okay? They were building guitars in Japan for the Japanese market. They went to a company called Fujigen, and they were building Japanese, I'm pretty sure it was Fujigen, they were building Fenders, Strats, and stuff for that market. But the day I introduced my Bel Aire start hitting the stores, Fender introduces the Strat, Japanese Strat for $399.
So what was the price difference between theirs and yours?
Half.
Theirs was half of yours?
And it's Fender, and nobody, nowadays, cheap Fenders are a thing, but nobody had seen a Fender under $700-800 back then. So it was just an anomaly, and it killed me. I mean, it just, this plan that I put in place just about, wiped me out.
Okay, so you finally make the transition to importing guitars, and you put in all this effort, and you have this product that you're super proud of. You have all the colors. And then when Fender comes out with this half price model of what they were doing, how did that make you feel, or how did that affect your business? Like, how did that impact you? Did you pivot, or where did you go from there with that?
Yeah, I pivoted.
Well, can you tell me about that?
Okay, so I think I talked about this a little before, but Jack Westheimer owned a factory called Cort at the time, okay? Mm-hmm. You know Cort.
I do.
Okay. So he owned, and Cort was just an import company, and it made jobber guitars. I mean, just guitars that would show up like in, cheap, like not even music stores, Sears catalog, that kind of stuff, or low-end stores that, had teaching studios and had a few guitars on the wall. Mm-hmm. And he was always trying to get me to go to Cort. And weird story is like Jack Westheimer went to high school with my mother.
Really?
Yeah.
What are the odds?
I know.
Such a small, everything in your world, it's just such a small world. Like, you know everyone.
I know.
Everyone just is right around the corner from you.
He lives in the next town over.
Literally around the corner from you.
His warehouse is in the, and he was bugging me forever. Just, why don't you come by? Why don't you come by? And now I got a bust to move, okay? Japan and Korea, like Korea's cheaper, So like, okay, I'll go check this out.
Yeah.
So I tell Jack, I said, I'm coming over, have two 6-packs of guitars, which is, guitars imported a pack.
People usually come over and they're like, I'm bringing 2 6-packs of beers. And you're like, I have 2 6-packs of guitars on my way over.
So Jack unpacks. I told him, I said, I want to see 2 6-packs. He had his guys bring them in. Yeah. And all of a sudden I'm looking at 12 guitars. I'm looking at these guitars and going over, and literally by looking at these 12 guitars, I said, Jack, I know everything wrong with your factory. I said,
you could just tell right away by looking at it.
Yeah, I said, I'll fly over there, and I cut a deal with him. I said, I want to, you can build my guitars, I want financing, and I want stuff, and I'll improve your factory. He said, cool. I flew. This time I went to Japan, and then I went to Korea. Literally just puddle jumped. To Korea. I'm a vegetarian. First thing I do when I get off the plane, they take me to a
sushi place?
Some place where they cook in front of you. And they put
like a hibachi?
Yeah, they put a big hunk of fat.
God.
Probably big fat on the griddle. And I didn't eat.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I'm worse now as far as, vegan and all that stuff, but pretty much I don't eat where there's meat. So anyhow, I go to the factory, and the experience was just like, I go over there and they're just doing tonnage of guitars. They literally had like a tub, a 55-gallon drum of polyester. Uh-huh. And they had these dudes, like they were taking guitar bodies on wires, dipping them in, and that's how they were, pulling them out, and they're just running all, and they're bringing them back. Another guy comes in. It was like an assembly line.
But with just all people.
Yeah, just putting, sealing up these guitars, and when they dried, they were all runny, and then they had these big belt sanders and sanding the shit out of the runs and stuff like that. It was like a process, but the way it went with me is like things like what I noticed is they could actually build a decent guitar at the time for the times, but they were beating the shit out of them. They were scratched and dinged and all sorts of problems, which is what I noticed when they took the 12 guitars out of the box.
Oh, you mean between like importing it from there to here?
Like from building it to getting it into the box, they were beating the shit out of them.
Really? Okay. Well, that's a problem.
I know.
They treat it like a chair or something, huh?
Yeah, it was like, nothing mattered, And so I'm like, okay, guys. And they had racks. They're working on guitars, and it's all, all the screws are really cheap metal and stuff. So there's a middle metal filings on the bench, and they're working on the guitars, and there's metal filings and stuff. And I'm like, you got to clean all this up. So what happened is, this is kind of typically how it'd go. I would have them, got the boss, and I would say, you can't do this. You have to, you can't beat the shit out of your guitars.
Right.
Then they'd go have a 10-minute meeting with all the, 5 dudes or something like that. Mm-hmm. Then they come back and they say, we don't understand because when someone gets a guitar, they get scratched up anyways. And I'm like, in America, people want to put in their own scratches.
Right. Let them scratch it themselves.
It's a cultural thing, you know what I mean? So
they didn't even think it was a big deal that they were delivering them that day because they figured they'd be like that.
What to do? Well, they got these guitar racks where they're working on the guitars, and they're jamming them into the guitars are literally like being pressed against each other's with pickups and stuff.
Yeah.
I said, you can't do this. There has to be space. They come back, oh, we don't have enough floor space,
So what did you do?
Everything's a 10-minute meeting, and then they come back, okay?
Right.
I said, well, double your racks, make them too high.
You essentially went in there and kind of assess what they were doing and then made your professional recommendations.
Right. Some of the
Because
stuff
you're like,
was,
if you're going to work with me, I have quality control that I need things to be
and
met.
some of it was just so basic they just didn't understand what had to go in the box, you know.
Right.
And a million other things. When I left there, they were all wearing like these photo finishing gloves that we used to use, and they cleaned up. It was like a big thing.
You did a little makeover,
right? And there were issues with paint and fingerboards and drying wood and all that stuff too. But so I put all that stuff in place, and I put my guy in there for the better part of a year. One of my guys, and the deal was, they pay his cost of living. I'll pay his salary.
Okay.
I think that was what it was. But we both participated, which was dumb because I should have said you buy it all, because now they got a great inspector guy there. It was hard to get a guy to live in Korea back then,
Right.
So
now you're working with the Cort manufacturing factory to create your line of guitars, correct?
Right. But guess who's benefiting? Cort.
Well, yeah.
And everyone else who followed me in there. BC Rich, Kramer, Fender, which we'll get to in a minute, okay?
They all followed you to the same
If Dean
factory?
Zelinsky's making guitars there, they know the quality is good enough for everybody else. And every factory I've ever gone into overseas, all the competition followed me in there.
Yeah.
So
because they knew you'd go pave the way for them, basically.
Right, yeah. So if it's good for Dean, it's good for us. Okay, so now we're going to get back to the the paradigm shift, okay?
Paradigm shift.
So when we were doing this, the only way you could communicate overseas, okay, back in the day, once again, paradigm shifts are like a lot of things converging at one time to make something, an event, to make a change, okay?
Yeah.
We had telex. You could only communicate with a telex machine. Now, telex machines are way before your time.
Yeah, I've never even heard of that.
Almost, but they were mega, like a typewriter, okay? But they weighed like 80 pounds or...
Pre-fax machine.
Oh, yeah. So, and you would type on this machine, and it was like, it was a floor-standing machine, okay? And you would type on it, and you'd like a ticker tape. There'd be a tape, okay? And as you're typing, it's punching holes in this piece of paper tape, okay? And you're typing a letter and seeing the letter that you're typing, okay? Then when you were all done, and God forbid you made a mistake, because you had to go now correct the mistake in your ticker tape thing.
There's no delete, right? You got to start over.
No, there's no back button.
Did you just type super slow and make sure that you got everything?
Well, usually you had somebody else doing the typing, a girl who could, back days, I'm sorry, but they had women secretaries back then, and they did the typing, and they learned how to use it. But I had to go buy one of these things as soon as I got involved. So once you make this long tape, then you got to feed it in the machine and you hit go, okay? And this machine, when it's typing on its own, it's like cha-chunk, chunk, chunk, chunk. It's like rattling the floor, and the keys are hitting, and it's cha-chunk, chunk, 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 chunk. So it now will print out what you just typed, and that's how you proof it, okay? And when it looks good, you've made a good tape. Then you load it back in. And then you have to dial. I forgot what you dialed, but this basically was a line that went under the ocean all the way to Korea, okay? There's a wire.
How long did it take to get there?
The message?
Yeah, like, is it something where it's like, okay,
you dial
2 minutes or like 2 hours?
You didn't know. It didn't matter. I'll tell you why. Because you would do this.
Send it out and hope it made it?
Exactly, because they're on the other side of the clock. So when you're typing it, they're sleeping, okay? So you'd get a line, and you'd hear the dial tone, and then you'd hit go. And there was some way of telling if sometimes it would drop the line in the middle of the communication.
Yeah.
And sometimes you would know, and sometimes you wouldn't know, okay?
Oh, my God.
And then you'd fire again if you knew. So the only way you really knew if it got there was the next day if you got a response.
Is that how you would place orders as well?
Well, this was a little different because our orders they had an office
Okay.
And right here. So all my business communication was kind of like here.
Right.
And then they had a telex machine that did all the work, okay? Put the orders into the factory. But my guy's over there, and I have to communicate with him on a daily basis, okay? And all of a sudden, I get like a thing, hey, Dean, overnight, I just rejected 300 necks.
Oh,
that
great.
kind of stuff, okay? I'm communicating with my guy Will over there.
Uh-huh.
So that's how we communicated. You couldn't send a drawing. You couldn't do, you shipped stuff like a sample. They made their counter samples. Everything was just so long. So
that's crazy.
So when I say paradigm shifts, you could imagine that none of this business that we're doing today could exist communicating like that.
Oh my gosh, it's crazy to even think about that. Now, at the same time, at this point, are your competitors literally in the same room as you? Or like their stuff is being created in the same factory? Well,
that's common all over, like, what is it? I just had to buy a new microwave. All the microwaves are made in like one factory, you know what I mean? And they make for everybody, stuff like that. Well, that was kind of happening in the guitar business. It's still happening, I mean,
right.
The Cort factory still, they're in Indonesia now and they're building for everybody. Okay?
Did anyone ever try to like secretly sabotage where they would like send a letter and say like, love Fender, but really it was from you. And you're like, oh, just cancel those 500 guitars.
I think they knew who it was from. There's a phone.
From not
something
Dean.
on there, yeah. But what happened? So it was impossible to communicate, and that was hindering your ability to do business. Okay,
right.
But
you had no choice really at that point because everybody had made the move,
right.
And it just affected not only the guitar industry but everything.
By the way, once Fender goes offshore. Mm-hmm. This is like I said, this story has a lot of moving parts, okay? But once we were kind of holding our own, like I said, until that moment when Fender went offshore and started bringing guitars in. And once that happens, they're the biggest,
Yeah.
You've got two choices. You either have to go offshore or go out of business because that's all. You can't fight it. Right. And I will tell you today, Hartley Peavy always said, I will never go offshore. He had everything dialed in. He had government loans. He's in a very depressed labor market. He was in Mississippi, had all his real estate paid for early on. He had everything going on to be able to manufacture in the United States. Wasn't in Chicago, a major market like me, and he eventually had to close all his factories. So this was, detrimental.
Yeah, that's awful.
But what happened is the factory got a fax machine as soon as fax machines became available. Mm-hmm. And as soon as I found out the factory had a fax machine, I had to get a fax machine. I call a guy, fax machine salesman. He came to my office with this fax machine to demo it. And I said, you're not leaving here with that machine.
One of my favorite things about you is that you're so scrappy. Like, no matter what's happening, I feel like you always have your finger on the pulse of whatever's going on. And you're also somebody who's extremely innovative. So it just, and not only in this story, but in any story that you've really told me about from the very beginning with your manufacturing, was you would always just kind of find out what that next thing is. And it seems like you're always like one step ahead of everybody else. You're always one step ahead of everybody else. And I think that's something that's really a testament to your character that I really appreciate. And I think that people that are fans of your guitars really appreciate because you always do something super innovative and unique.
Well, thank you. That's quite a compliment.
Thank yourself. I'm just pointing it out to you in case you don't realize you're like a goddamn fucking pioneer over here.
But I was behind the curve, okay, at that point in time, okay?
Well, you were resisting it, but you came in and you wanted things to be at a higher quality. Like, you didn't just want to accept that, okay, people are going over there, it's cheaper. Like, you were like, well, I don't want it to be cheaper. I want it to be of good quality still. So the fact that you flew there and you did a quality check, I mean, I think that just says a lot about who you are and the integrity of what you like to produce.
Right. Well, yeah, I think I had a thought. I just lost it.
At this point, you said now Fender, they were the biggest manufacturers at that time. They put out this cheaper model. It's affecting you, and you're now making moves with your business. And what did you do to kind of combat that?
Okay, well, now I'm buying out of Korea. Okay.
Right, because it was cheaper then?
Korea was cheaper, and I was the first guy in there. The Cort factory was the factory. I went over there, made it happen.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
You went there and you changed the game again, again.
I, to reap the benefits.
Right.
As soon as I'm in there, shortly after and eventually Fender goes in there. And when Fender goes in and they have these huge orders, guess who gets pushed out?
Right.
Dean.
Rude.
I thought the fuck would. I thought he would honor our relationship, but nothing excites money people more than money.
Right. Yeah. It's a shame.
So that was the thing. So the communication age kept getting better. Okay. And the more the communication age got better, the easier it was to import. And the easier it was to import, the easier it was to shut down factories in America. Okay. So that was, and by the way, we did it. We wrote it out 86. I got this tandem thing going. I'm importing and I'm manufacturing. Okay, because you don't want to shut down the manufacturing, which was pretty popular back in those days,
Right.
But all the money you're making on importing, you're spending to keep your factory alive. And that got unsustainable.
So what did you do at that point?
86, I had to shut the factory down.
Really? The one here?
Yeah. So the last USA made Dean Zelinsky, Dean guitars was in 86. And then we went import till 91, 100% import.
Okay.
Out of the Cort factory. And 91, this is the race to the bottom.
Really? Yeah.
So now I'm going to the NAMM show with my Hollywood line and my babies that we were making out of there and all these guitars, the 88 line. And the Floyd Rose got popular because of Eddie Van Halen. And the Eddie Van Halen story I kind of talked about, and I'll probably save that for another day, but Eddie Van Halen kind of drove this thing because he was the best guitar player people have seen since like Jimmy Page or, who knows.
Right.
And he was playing a garage built guitar painted with Testor's paint and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And if he had come out and said, I'm playing this alembic or some fancy guitar, Korea couldn't have capitalized on that. But he's playing a garage-built guitar. Korea's like, yeah, how many you want?
Right.
The paint jobs didn't have to be killer. We can do that. Once again, another thing converging to make a trend. And it really got to the point where the USA sales hurt not only because of the finances. Mm-hmm. I mean, the financial aspect to it, but what was popular was, guitars are trends. They're fads, okay?
Right.
And what was popular was cheap, garage-built guitars. So we were out of sync on a pricing level, but we're also out of sync on what became really popular.
Right, and it's like whatever became popular was really depended on whoever was the rock star at the time or whoever was the most relevant, right? So, and people would just want what they're playing, right? So you're saying when Eddie Van Halen was playing this guitar that he had sort of put like a Frankenstein style guitar, right? Like kind of put together, it impacted you guys.
Yeah, big time.
Yeah.
And we're not just talking about a rock star, we're talking about a guitar god.
Right. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Incredible.
And they only come around, like in my lifetime, a handful. There was Hendrix, and then there was him. Yeah. There was Dimebag Darrell.
Right.
And then there were some, like Steve Vai type guys shortly thereafter. But, he was, Van Halen was top 3 for sure.
Yeah. And I just found out, you already know this, I'm sure, was that Eddie had given his guitar to be buried with Dimebag.
Yes, I was there.
Yeah, that's incredible.
We're going to have to talk about the dime bag story and
Save
the
that.
dime bag. The funeral was like a
I can't even
thing.
imagine. Yeah, that's incredible that he did that, though.
Right. So that was. There's a lot more to the story.
So Eddie Van Halen really changed the guitar market forever.
Big time at the time. Things came back over years. But what happened was, in addition to Eddie Van Halen and all that, he was playing a Floyd Rose. Okay. When I say things converge, okay, so now the coolest invention probably ever on a guitar was the Floyd Rose and Eddie Van Halen. You know, to be Eddie Van Halen, you need a Floyd Rose. So Floyd Rose got hot. So now we're going to NAMM shows and everything's changed, okay? And literally dealers are coming up to us and the questions are like, what factory your guitar is being built in? Because they knew whatever factory, they had their idea that the Cort factory was good, this factory was bad, this factory is good. This is at the dealer level. Like, they don't know anything about guitar manufacturers, but they know what factory is good. And the Floyd Rose was popular. So to sum up what was going on, I'm going to the NAMM show, and they're like, how cheap can you sell me a Floyd Rose with a guitar attached to it? and what factory is it being built in? And I'm like, okay, I'm Dean. I built these cool guitars.
Right.
I did all this stuff. I had rock stars playing them. That's why I got in the business. And now I'm going to the NAMM show and people are saying, how cheap can you sell me a guitar made in the Cort? What factory is made in?
Yeah.
And with how cheap can you sell me a Floyd Rose with a guitar attached to it? It was like a whole different animal, okay?
It sucks.
And it was just the big, demise of everything. And in 91, I had enough and I said, I'm done. And I took 9 years off out of the industry.
I mean, like you said, it basically just became a giant race to the bottom, right? Like who can sell, like you said, I mean, the whole thing shifted into just like, how can I get this object for this price as low as possible, which just changed the whole everything.
And that's a synopsis of my story, but you got to know that all my competition, BC Rich ended up selling his company. Bernie Rico ended up selling his company to some other company. It's been sold 1 million times since then. Grover Jackson sold to a company called International Music, IMC. He ended up on the outside looking in. So Grover Jackson was Jackson Charvel. Eventually it got sold to Fender. Hamer sold to a company called Command, which owned Ovation. Hamer's as a brand is gone. I think Hamer got sold. I think Fender owned it for a minute and didn't even do anything with it. And now it went back. Anyways, Hamer's no longer a brand. Kramer went out of business.
Wow.
Fender survived because it brought in venture capital. It was just a big company. It could entertain venture capital.
Right.
And Gibson got sold. I think, Henry bought it, did his thing, and then, had this recent. But I would doubt Gibson's made money in decades,
But this affected more than just the guitar manufacturers, like you said. It really affected America, like nationwide, because also suddenly these union workers and people that were in manufacturing and the consumer is now also getting paid at a lower rate. So it's like they're reducing the cost of the product, but it's just affecting everyone and the entire American economy, really, right?
When I say race to the bottom, this was a race to the bottom of America, okay? Now, here's my experience. Like I said, stories have been rewritten, but this is my front row seat to what happened in our country, okay? And it started with this concept that we're going offshore, okay? And everybody's going to get a better deal. Well, who doesn't get a better deal is the American worker, okay? Eventually they get underemployed and unemployed, okay? And that's what happened to America. Now, when I went to Korea, that was my big awakening. I'm watching dudes working, and they're riding bicycles, and they're eating rice, and for lack of a better term, they're shitting in a hole in the ground. There's no plumbing in the factories, okay?
I remember you telling me this,
Right, okay.
It's wild.
And I'm like, okay, my guys like to drive cars, they eat steak, and they like plumbing, okay? And now the game was I have to take $60,000 checks and I have to let my guys go, let them all, put them on the street and send $60,000 checks to Korea. And I'm like, okay, this is the trend, and I'm like not even the size of a gnat on an elephant compared to the other businesses in our country. I said we're gonna suffer, and they're gonna end up eating steak and driving cars and all this stuff. I went back to Korea. I think this is my first. Maybe I made another trip, but 2012, I went back to Korea, took my son with, went to the area, Itaewon, where you could buy, have a 3-piece suit tailor-made for $70. There's the Rolls-Royce dealership. There's the Ferrari dealership. There's the Gucci store. Every designer, everything was in that area where you used to be. They were literally shaving pigs on the street and selling chicken wings and dead chickens. And now there's all these boutique things, okay?
What would you say, like, the time frame? You said how many years? Like 10 years had gone by?
I started in 77. I closed my factory in 88, the U.S. factory.
Right. And you're saying in that time from when you first went to later on, you saw an actual, like, economic change in that whole area where the factories were. Yeah.
No, I'm sorry. I went back in 2012. But my point... they sold this, the Reagan thing, they sold it as, here's the most basic thing, okay? How is wealth created? This is a Deanism.
Let's hear it.
Okay. Wealth is created by pulling stuff out of the ground and forming it. Figure the beginning of time, the earth is a ball, okay?
That's
There's
true.
Nothing on it. Everything you see today, anywhere, everything here, everything you see on the street or roadside, was all pulled out of the ground and formed. Okay. People who pulled shit out of the ground and formed it made money. I mean, increased value and made wealth. So in the old days, people would raise animals and make food and pelt and stuff. Other people were apparently pulling metal out of the ground and forming it and whatnot. But that's how commerce was done. And in 1980, we said, we're not going to pull stuff out of the ground and form it. We're going to live off somebody who does.
Right.
Okay. And the only way wealth is created is pulling stuff out of the ground and forming it. Korea got wealthy. All these Asian countries that were pulling stuff out of the ground and forming it got wealthier.
Yeah.
And we got poor. We got in debt. The other thing is, before we started importing, we had kind of a financial ecosystem in America. The money pretty much stayed in our country.
Yeah.
So, like, people are building cars in Detroit. I'm building guitars in Chicago, okay? Someone buys a guitar from me. My guys make money. They go to a restaurant. They make enough money. They can go to a restaurant. The restaurant makes money.
You're stimulating the local economy.
Right. A waitress back then, mostly waitress or waiter, makes money. Everybody wins, okay? And then they spend money here, okay? I buy a car made in Detroit. Someone in Detroit auto workers make money. They go out for dinner. They buy clothes. They support the local stuff.
Right.
So the money's kind of staying here in America. It's moving around. People are creating wealth, yes, but it's within our borders, our ecosystem.
Right.
All of a sudden, this Reagan thing, we're going to go offshore and get a better deal. I'm sending $60,000 checks overseas. Guess what?
Yeah.
A Korean dude's making money. Now, he wasn't making a lot, but he's making money. He goes to a restaurant or goes local. Someone there's, he's buying clothes there. He's going to a restaurant there. A waitress in Korea's, making money. They're all benefiting. That money doesn't come back. So I'm sending $60,000 checks overseas. My guys are unemployed. Yeah, they all got jobs eventually. But eventually, as this thing grows, everybody not only, they get underemployed. They're not making any money. Okay.
Right. And as time is going on, more of that money is going overseas. Less is here. The economy here is suffering.
Right.
The workers are here. And it's sort of this, you were telling me earlier that it's sort of, we were sort of sold this belief that it was going to stimulate the economy. And it sort of did the opposite of that,
Trickle
right?
down. Okay.
Right.
So what I'm saying is I'm like a 20-something-year-old kid, okay? I didn't go to college. I didn't get a degree in finance. But I
Right.
understood math, okay? And I'm like, okay, this is going to cream our country, okay?
Yeah.
This is going to kill us. I could do the thing. Okay, so if I'm Dean Zelinsky and I'm not a Harvard MBA or economist and I can figure it out, do you think for a second these people who put it and played it know what was going to happen?
Right.
Okay, so here's how trickle down was sold. Reagan says we're going to do trickle down economics. Very basic plan, okay? There's two dudes, okay?
Mm-hmm.
This guy's, those days we didn't have billionaires, but he's a multimillionaire. Mm-hmm. You're going to get a tax break. You're going to, right now, we're going to take care of you. And you, Mr. Worker guy, it's going to trickle down to you, okay?
Right.
The rich guy's guaranteed it right then and there, but the guy who needs the money, he's got to hope it trickles down. Now, I don't know about you, but they literally use the word trickle. If my shower is trickling, I call a plumber, okay? That means you have a problem, okay?
Right.
They didn't say it's going to pour down. They didn't say it's going to run down. They said it's going to trickle. So they literally, and people in America were so fucking stupid that they literally bought into this policy that this rich guy should have money, and I got to hope it trickles, which it never did. Okay, so this was the beginning of we're going to filter all the money to the richest people on earth. They knew it was going to fuck America. They knew it was going to fuck the American worker. Now, once again, but they didn't care because they're going to run off with the bank, okay? Mm-hmm. Now, let me just tell you about running off with the bank, okay? This is my view of the party, front row seat, okay? Mm-hmm. What never stopped flowing in communist countries? It's not an easy question. Everyone I ask doesn't have the answer.
Yeah, I'm like trying to think of an actual...
Flowing. It's a liquid.
Well, gas?
Vodka.
Oh.
Okay. If you're going to run off with the bank, you have to keep your people satisfied, okay? Uh-huh. Okay. Or sedated. Poland.
It's getting dark.
Okay. Russia. I had a guy who worked for me who was, who came over from Poland, told me how bad things were when he was young. He literally picked up, food off ate an apple off the street if he can find, core because they were so poor. You'd literally stand in line for hours for the store to open, and somebody would show up with some yogurt, and they'd ration it out. Okay.
Yeah, it's crazy.
But they kept the people sedated. Now, if you're going to run off with the bank if you're going to run off with the bank in America, what do we crave? You have to keep the people satisfied. What do Americans crave?
I don't know.
Stuff. We're the biggest consumers of stuff, okay? Amazon, stuff.
You don't think Americans crave vodka too?
Not as many, but there's there's vodka, but we
just want
stuff.
Things.
I mean, all our homes are full of stuff. Okay, so if you can run off the bank, you have to be able to provide them stuff. And importing goods, okay, selling, letting goods into the country very cheap in huge numbers, okay.
Yeah.
And people can buy stuff. Guess what? Jeans were $60, now they're $20. VCRs were $800, now they're $200. Blah blah blah. People can get a lot of stuff, and that keeps them very pacified. So the person is not getting a raise. Okay, he is becoming unemployed or underemployed at that point, but he doesn't know it because he still has buying power. Then the rich people, the rich people run off with the bank. Okay.
So the people, the consumers at that level have like a psychological need that's being met. And it's almost this illusion where they're
doing
obtaining
good.
more things.
Yeah.
So it's like they're looking around and they have more objects in their life and they think, okay, I'm doing well.
Right.
But they're not financially secure by any means. It's just they're lowering the price of the goods, and
Right.
then it gives the illusion
Right.
that they're doing well, right?
Right. And here's the other experience I had, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So the whole concept with going offshore is, oh, I'm Mr. Big Company. I'm going to, Mr. Fender.
Mr. Big Company.
I'm
Nice to meet
Fender.
you.
I'm Fender. I'm going to go offshore and I'm going to be able to get guitars so cheap and I'm going to make so much money and,
Right.
beat the market. You know what I mean? I'm going to have this huge advantage. 6 months later, guess what? Everybody's there.
So now what? Now it's just
That's the race to the bottom,
Right.
okay?
God, what a mess.
Japan was working for $1 or $2 or $3 an hour. Oh, we'll go to Korea. They're working for $1. Korea's eventually going to have inflation. It goes to $3. Oh, we'll go to Indonesia. Oh, they're working for $1 an hour. Oh, so we're basically industrializing countries at this huge clip to save $1 an hour, okay? Now, I was there. I flew to all those countries. I sat in the lobbies of hotels, you go down for breakfast, and there's all these dudes, not only America, Germany, France, they're all over, having breakfast. They flew in on 777s, engineers and stuff, and they're developing these countries, okay? We're getting unemployed. They're going to this country. Then they go to this country. Well, those countries were poor countries. So when their market comes up, all of a sudden they have consumption in their own market. So they were able to sustain because, they were making nothing. Now everybody can make stuff, whatever it was a plus. We're the ones with the big minus, okay?
Right.
We went backwards, okay?
Yeah.
And so what I'm saying is there was no business advantage whatsoever other than, because as soon as your competitors are there, the playing field's leveled. You can't make more money, okay? So this whole thing happened, but what happened is the people on the street, the American people got underemployed, okay? And the money got all siphoned to the top. That's why there's a gazillion billionaires today when we didn't hear the word billionaire. It wasn't by accident. It was orchestrated to bring all the money to the richest people in the world and have the average guy on the street is not doing well. And that's the political climate that's been going on for the last 10 or 20 years. The other thing that was sold to us is, billionaires are the job creators. They create the jobs. So we have to protect the billionaires. We can't even charge them, tax them because God forbid they should have to pay taxes. These are valuable people. And by the way, you can't funnel all the money up to the top if they actually have to pay taxes. So they call them job creators. And the reality is billionaires do not create jobs. What creates jobs are consumers.
So elaborate a little bit on that. How does the consumer create the job in the American society?
Okay, there's an old saying, nothing happens till something's sold, somebody sells something. And like China, was around forever. There were millionaires, there weren't billionaires, there were millionaires. They weren't doing well. As soon as we opened the doors and said, okay, guys, you can have access to a market of consumers, that's when China started doing well. So basically it wasn't billionaires that made it happen. It was consumers. And America is the greatest, if you look on the map, we're huge and we consume, we have states bigger than most countries. So we consume a ton of goods, okay? And that's what, So bottom line is they're bullshitting everybody saying, oh, we got to protect the billionaires. And it was just another angle to funnel money to the richest people in America, and, big, political angle.
At this point, essentially all of the consumption that's happening here is minimalized because a lot of our goods and services are now being imported from overseas, right? And basically you're saying that because all of the money is going over there and they're stimulating their economy, where does that leave us as the American economy, essentially, right?
Right. Well, once again, I talked about the ecosystem. I have a saying. I said, if money was water, we'd all be thirsty. Okay. And the thing is, the ecosystem, once the money's leaking out of there or going, and it's all being funneled, money's being funneled over there and funneled to the richest people in the world. There's not enough to go around, and the American worker is screwed. And by the way, I can't sell guitars in Detroit like I used to, back in the day.
Right. Because the American worker is just making less overall, and they're not able to consume the things that of quality that you would like to produce, because it's sort of just, like you said, this downward spiral for everything to be met at the bottom, where no one's really able to consume the quality of things that they would even like to, right?
And creating jobs is meaningless. I mean, obviously people need to eat. So if, someone's got a $30,000 a year job, at least they probably can eat. But it doesn't help the globe, it doesn't help U.S. in the fact that, we need people to make good wages so they can become consumers and we can sell goods to them.
Right. It's like you're creating a placeholder job, essentially, because they have enough money to make ends meet, but no one really has that extra money to put back into the economy.
Right. They got enough money to buy Chinese stuff.
Just live at the minimum, really.
Right. And I'm a guitar maker in America. I need people. I need consumers, and that's why I'm for the American people. I've always been for the American people. I'm against this whole movement because I can't sell enough guitars to billionaires because they're still only going to buy one or two. You know what I mean? I need millions of people that want to play guitar and buy guitar and can afford guitars, okay? I've always been for the worker in America because that's my market. That's who can buy a guitar. You can't sell guitars to billionaires. And by the way, as America got lousy in that category, the financial category, overseas markets got more popular because, you have to find other, which I'm sure everybody's doing, been doing, is like, got to find overseas markets.
Right. Do you think that the solution to this would be to slowly bring things back to the U.S., or do you think at this point it's just so far off in the other direction that it's something that can't be salvaged, or do you think it's something that we could bring back?
Okay. You can wreck a house in a day, but it takes like a year to build it. Okay.
Yeah, right. It's not an overnight solution for sure.
Okay. So if it took 30, 40 years to wreck America, you're not going to fix it in a year or 4 years. This is a long haul back. The only thing I buy from China are guitar cases, okay? We sell a guitar case for $139. If we built those guitar cases in America, they'd be $300, okay? That's what we'd have to sell them for. I would have to find people that can afford a $300 guitar case along with their guitar, which there would be very few.
Right.
So unless the wages come up in America where people can say, yeah, I want that guitar case, $300, you can't produce guitars cases in America because I would sell a bunch of guitars with no cases, okay? So the fact that I can sell them for $139 means these people can buy cases for their guitars. So it's a big, long-term process of getting the wages up in America, getting the product up, getting the way. If you were aggressive, it'd be 10 or 20 years, if you could do it.
Right.
But I think that's a ship that sailed.
Yeah, it's kind of scary to really digest that because we're so far from being able to re-stimulate our economy properly. It seems like it's just an uphill battle.
Well, there's a lot of moving parts. For one thing, big corporations and rich people have to pay taxes. They got to get away from that whole concept of they're job creators and just know they're taxpayers just like us. I mean, the military, the U.S. military is their biggest budget, the biggest part of the budget. It needs money. It gets money from taxes, okay? So the richest people, the richest corporations, they support the military, in concept.
Right.
But unless you're paying taxes, you're not supporting the military.
Right. That's an interesting point. Yeah.
So I'm not going to get in a big political thing ever. But that was my view of the story. Okay. I had a front row seat. I came from a manufacturing background. My father was a manufacturer. He did fine.
Yeah.
I got in when I was young in 77. Hang out my shingle. I'm doing great. It was political policies that wiped me out, okay? I did everything right, okay?
Yeah.
And this is America, it's sold as the greatest country on earth and opportunity and blah, blah, blah. And the rug was pulled out from under me I wanted to be a USA guitar manufacturer. And the other thing is, when you're a manufacturer and you have that talent, the barrier to entry is very high, okay? Because you really have to have the talent. You have to build the factory. What I did, not too many people could do, okay? Right. But call up a factory overseas and you say, I want a guitar that looks like this, but paint it red and put this thing and put this bridge on it. And here's my check for, $150,000, send me a container. A lot of people could do that.
Right. And suddenly what makes a guitar really special or like thoughtful and mindfully made is removed from that, because it's really something that can just be bought and manufactured, and it takes away that like je ne sais quoi that like you had with your company, which made it so unique.
My unique talent was all of a sudden diminished because anybody can just, and, less quality guitars got more acceptable because as people don't have money, they have to settle for what they can afford.
Which I'm sure is like fucking frustrating for you, who's dedicated their whole life to, creating something that you're really proud of, and that's something that even came from your family, and now here you are being forced to change.
It was a shitty road. I got out of the business. I got back in the business. Some came back. We're doing well now. I'm just saying, this was a very bad time in America, and it's affecting us greatly today. So okay. So this is my story. I wanted to be a manufacturer, and this is what happened to me. But zoom out, this happened a million times in America in every industry.
Right.
And it ain't good.
It's not ideal. So that's quite a story. You really have come so far with you were literally front row to everything that happened, and you were in the thick of it yourself.
Right. Well, one more thing I got to add. Decades later, it's being sold as, these countries ripped us off. Okay. These other countries are ripped us off.
Okay.
Everything was walked over there by U.S. businesses, okay? With the exception of the Japanese, when we were, like I'd be at the NAMM show, there was always the Japanese. When the movement first started, Japanese were already here for years with their cameras, and they'd go to the NAMM show, or they go to all trade shows, but they go to NAMM shows, and they're working your booth, and they're taking detailed pictures of your guitars. And we all kind of like blocked them and told them to leave and stuff like that. So Japan, yes, did come over here and try to copy our stuff, and they were big in the copy business. But that was just the beginning. After that, Korea, Indonesia, it was all just walked over by, Reagan had put all the stuff in play. Now it's going on. They didn't have to come here. We walked everything over there. Even in China, we walked over all the stuff. Now China, they say, they don't honor our patents. Well, they don't honor patents in their own country. It's just the cost of doing business there. If you want their cheap labor, guess what? You got to deal with their patent laws. So later it says, they're ripping us off. No, everything was walked there. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah. So that it's just the people in charge are just giving people lines of bullshit. The big business, nobody comes over here and rips us off. It's all done by big business. And by the way, if it never happened, you wouldn't see a happier camper than me.
Oh my God.
Okay, so that's I had a front row seat. That's my story. The political rewrite that's gone on for the last 40 years. You could believe it or not, but I was there. That was my story. I don't fucking lie. I don't make shit up. I knew this was a ripping off of America and and I said it when I was like in my young 20s, and everything I said was going to happen happened. Okay.
Yeah.
And where America paid a huge price and is still paying a huge price, and there's no easy way back.
Right.
I don't care who.
That's the scariest part.
I don't care who gets in office and says we're going to do this. At the end of the day, this debt is a snowball going downhill. That's so big now. When people personally get in debt, at some point they go bankrupt or they have to sell off assets, okay? They can't ever get ahead of the debt. Well, America can't go bankrupt. And I don't know, maybe we could get somebody to buy Alaska or Hawaii. I don't know. But, I don't know that we don't have enough assets. And the debt just, it's, debt on debt on debt. This year you own 100,000, next year you owe 120, the next year you own 146, the next year you own 200. It's stupid money that people can't even conceive. So the wealthiest people are just going to say, I'm going to get mine. Sorry, everybody else. And that's what's going on.
Right.
Okay. Jennifer, you have to back me up here. But if you love the podcast or if you like the podcast, please hit the subscribe button, the bell. I don't know what the fuck you're supposed to do, but help us out. Share it, play it for your neighbor. Play it for your dog. I don't care.
And Dean loves reading your comments.
Yeah.
I will say that. If you have some statements or some things you'd like to share, he reads all of them personally. So
right. I love to hear people talk about
me. He
me.
likes love letters. So if you want to gush over Dean, now's your chance.
Okay. Well, well, okay. So what's coming up next? Anything?
I'm super stoked for the next podcast. If things go as planned, I think that we will have Jim Peterick as our guest. We ran into him at the Rock Godz Hall of Fame event, and he mentioned that he'd be willing to have a podcast with us, hopefully. Love to hear about his journey with AIDS, with Survivor, and like his whole story, too.
His relationship with Sylvester Stallone.
That I know nothing about, but I'd love to hear.
Well, he made the song, so how that came about. I mean, he had a song on a Rocky movie, the theme song of a Rocky movie. That was kind of big in its day.
Yeah. I want to hear all about that. So I'm looking forward to that.
Okay, and what else?
You have a new neon sign also, forgot to comment.
Oh, yeah, that's huge.
Spooky, but...
Christmas, we all this year did where you get picked a person you got to buy for?
Oh, just like a gift exchange?
Yeah, it was small. And my daughter-in-law got me, and that... She had that sign custom.
Really?
My spider logo custom made for me.
That's such a great gift.
Yeah, she's a great daughter-in-law, great mother.
It's beautiful.
Yeah,
and a little creepy, but I like it. It's nice. It suits you.
It's my logo.
It lives back there in the
we don't use the spider.
Raptors.
We don't use a spider enough. We're gonna have to use a spider, but I love it on my set.
It's cool.
Replaced Mr. Machine.
Oh yeah.
Did it.
He got the boot.
It's a toy I loved when I was like maybe 5 or when I was very young, and Susie found one on eBay and bought it for me.
This is wild.
Yeah, see, it was mechanical. You could take it apart and put it back together.
Could you?
See why I liked it?
Yeah, it does make sense.
Okay, we have to wrap. By the way, Jennifer, she plays in a club, and she was playing. It was St. Patrick's Day, so she was like on stage till 3 a.m. So if she looks a little tired, that's why. Okay, thanks, Drew. Drew was our set producer today. Did a phenomenal job. This was a tough story to tell. I don't know if I got it all out there, but there was so many moving parts because literally you had my experience, the political stuff, and what happened to our country. And I could talk about this for 10 hours easily. I just had and I hope people get the gist that this was the fucking of America.
And if you got any questions, leave some comments below.
Okay. People will have their own view of the party, and they'll give the.
If they can relate too, we want to hear about that.
They'll give the political spin. Mine wasn't political. Mine was what the fuck happened. Okay, we're out. Bye.
Bye.
Made good 800?
Dean Zelinsky, a noted maker of these, has crafted them for Sammy Hagar, 9 Inch Nails, and many other artists. Dylan.
What are guitars?
Correct.